Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for coming back. If this is your first time, I'm Auntie Clavi and this is my journey to 30.
Tra la 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 la, this is a song. Tra la 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 la, for my channel.
I'm gonna start with a bit of a story time, but I'm really gonna try to keep it short and wrap this video up as quickly as possible. Alright, cool. So about a year and a half ago, I went full-time into my own business, and it really has been a roller coaster of a ride, but God has been like extremely good to me. But I went through this time where I couldn't sleep at all. I didn't get a wink of sleep, and it was so frustrating. And literally it got to the point where I realized that, no man, this is not normal, like insomnia. I'm going to use this word, I'm being tormented. Like when I would try to sleep, I'd have lucid dreams. When I would fall asleep, I would have lucid dreams. I'd have like sleep paralysis, and I'd wake up afraid to go back to sleep. So if I wasn't experiencing like insomnia, I would fall asleep, but then I would have these attacks in my sleep, and it was just like I was then afraid to sleep, so I was constantly exhausted. People would bump into me and say things like, yo, Clavi, business must be booming, hey, like you're not sleeping, you just, why do you look so tired? And I eventually started to use the excuse that, no, I'm working so hard. So working hard where? I was definitely just not sleeping. I used to call Pumlani in the middle of the night, and now that I'm not sleeping, I'd feel like, no, you must also not be sleeping, surely, And he got so tired of all of this that, well, first he was just concerned, and he eventually started to like play me music on his guitar. And this carried on for a while, but we actually found that it helped. So whenever I couldn't sleep, he would whip out his guitar, put me on loudspeaker, and do all the way till I fell asleep. This went on, dare I say, for months. Yeah, it went on for months, and Mans became so good at this. At some point, he just started to record himself playing, and then if I woke up, he'd just play that back to me, or find playlists, of someone playing an acoustic guitar, and that would help me sleep. This continued for some time, and I remember thinking to myself, when Saul in the Bible was being tormented, he needed David to come play the harp for him, and that would help him, relax. And I thought to myself, am I Saul? If Pumlani's modern day David, does that make me Saul? This is a little not fun. Nonetheless, this continued for some time, and I just kind of struggled through it, and that was that. Around the same time, I remember so vividly one day I was working on my laptop, and I design, so I do graphic design, and I was working on my laptop, and this image I had on my screen was blurry. And I thought to myself, this is weird. I know that like this is a high-res image. It shouldn't be pixelated. It shouldn't be blurry. Is it my screen? I'm wiping. I'm doing all sorts of stuff, and it's just not working. So I realized after some time that this thing is like continuing. Now I'm struggling to drive at night because my eyesight was just kind of, it was becoming a bit sketchy. I noticed this in like different parts of my life. I wouldn't be able to, I pride myself in how clear my vision is. And now I wouldn't be able to read something that like even a person with what I consider average eyesight should be able to see. So I went to the doctor, I did an eye test. He said, yeah, you need glasses, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, this is so great. I want to be one of those people with some frames. And I was quite excited for that. So all of this is happening around the same time period. Also around this time, a friend of mine says to me, dude, like you're exhausted, you're going through the most, and I'm going away with my family. I've got some timeshare in Mpumalanga, come with me. So I'm like, free holiday, let's go. So during this time that we then go to Mpumalanga, I'm also going through like a breakup, and just guys, like, I don't know about other people, but it seems like the closer I get to 30, the more my life is just doing this over and over and over and over again. So I'm going through a breakup. I can't see, I can't sleep, and it's just like, God, I'm trying to run a business. I'm trying to like walk this path. Why does it just seem like everything is getting harder and harder and harder? Nonetheless, I go off to Mpumalanga, and while I'm there now, I'm a little bit more relaxed, so I'm not working as much and whatnot. And I noticed that, like, at the same time every day, this like heaviness comes upon me, and I'm like, I only noticed it because I was, doing a whole lot of nothing. But then in hindsight, while I was there, I realized that even when I'm at home, around about the same time of day, I just kind of go to the sunken place. As I mentioned in the last video, I kept coming back to this place, and in this season of my life, it was like every day. But I noticed that it's happening around the same time of day, so I'm like, this is just hectic, man. Long story short, I stay, we enjoy ourselves, I deal, not deal because it's not dealt with, and then on the last day we drive back to Joburg. We come back to Joburg, and when we are like on the way, her daughter says that she'd like to go to youth because there was a worship night that evening, a pajama party worship night, and I'm like, cool, keen, I'll go with you. So I get into my onesie and we go to youth together. We're at youth, it's great, worship is happening. And while worship is happening, the pastor says there's people in the room who haven't been able to sleep, but it feels more like torment than, just not sleeping. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's me. And over there, homeboy sees me and he's like, haha, that's you. You better go forward for prayer. Because, he'd been struggling through it, playing lead guitar every night. So I go forward for prayer, and Pastor Chris is walking around and he's praying for everyone. And when he gets to me, he lays hands on me and he starts to pray. And as he's praying, he stops and he looks at me and he says, Clavi, do you have any unforgiveness in your life? And my goodness, like a movie reel, like flipping through pages of a book, I just suddenly have this like wave of names of people, and I didn't realize up until that exact moment how much unforgiveness I had inside me. Where I was sitting, I was like, no, unforgiveness, that's milk, that's I'm a mature Christian. I forgive and I move on. Forgiveness is a part of my daily life. No, it wasn't. But the trick here was that I, once again, wasn't aware that what I was dealing with was actually unforgiveness. Where I was at, I was just angry. I was very, very angry, specifically at my family. If you guys are watching this now, you made me go blind. I felt like things were just so incredibly unfair. Like there's this pressure on me and these expectations placed on me, where in reality I should be able to rely on everybody else. I felt like everyone else was relying on me, and this burden just became so heavy to carry. And over time of carrying this burden, I actually became like deeply enraged at the situation that I found myself in. So this pastor says this, and I'm just like, names come up. What in the world? And I start crying, and I realize that, oh my goodness, I have unforgiveness towards my family. I'm that angry. So cool, fine. He says, he tells me to just pray and repeat after him, and we pray. And I walk away from the situation and I'm just like shook. I'm like, are you telling me that how were these two things linked? My like unforgiveness and me not sleeping. Okay. God, I didn't realize this. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I was harboring unforgiveness based on something that I was, justifying as anger, because the situation that I was in, I felt like was unfair. Cool, happens, great, that's done. As I drive home that night, I kid you not, I could see clearly, crisp, probably better than I could before this whole saga had begun. And I was so shocked by this. And yeah, I'm gonna try kind of wrap this up, but I quickly realized, it was quickly revealed to me that my non-sleep, my insomnia, these attacks I was having at night, and also my very physical, literal blindness was a result of unforgiveness, or rather what I was, painting or packaging as justified anger. And I guess to some extent it was justified at the time. But all of this was causing me to suffer, literally, in my everyday life. Cool. Fast forward to like a week ago. I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we're talking about Saul. If you can remember a little bit earlier, I spoke about Saul and how how when I wasn't sleeping and Kumlani would play me the guitar and I'd fall asleep, I kind of was like, oh my goodness, am I Saul? This is awkward. Am I being tormented? Has God left me? So I'm reading through this passage, and I read over what the prophet Saul says to the prophet Samuel says to King Saul. I'm going to read that real quick. It says in 1 Samuel 15 verse 22, and Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. Verse 23, rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king. Get stuck on verse 23, and I'm just like, this is a bit hectic. Like, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. And I'm like, to presume is as bad as like intentional sin and like having an idol, and I looked back at like my whole situation, and again, I'm placing myself in the shoes of Saul, or rather I'm personifying myself as Saul in the story, in terms of being tormented. And okay, so in the next chapter, Saul gets tormented by the Spirit and David comes to play. But I kind of make this like link, and I'm reading over this, and like I get stuck on this verse, and I'm asking God, like, now God, reveal it to me, like what you're saying here. And it dawns on me that like in my time of unforgiveness and like harboring all of this anger, I remember this very clearly. I had the thinking of like, I would take this anger that I had to God, and I'd cry out and be like, this is so unfair, God. Like, I had this view or this presumption that God understood. He understood why I'm this angry. He understood why I deserve to hold on to my anger and why I deserve to be treated better in this situation. And I presumed that God was empathetic to my unforgiveness, not understanding that no, God is empathetic to me forgiving, because he literally gave his life to forgive. So me holding on and harboring this anger and, pointing a finger and being like, this is unfair, this, and God will understand, was essentially me creating a false God, a God who understands or empathizes with my unforgiveness. Not a God who gives me the strength to forgive and helps me through that, but rather I created a God who sits with me and sulks. I in reading the story, there's a time where Saul kind of says, no, this is what the people wanted. I wondered to myself, like in that time when I was complaining about my family did this or that person did that, did I have voices ringing back to me saying, dude, I get it, but like, you need to forgive, you need to deal better, you need to ask God? Or did I have voices saying, yeah, that's so unfair, you're even my family this? It's so important for us to realize that the things coming out of our mouths are shaping the decisions and the views of the person on the other side, and in turn, that's the walk that they're walking with God. Obviously, it's not reliant on just those people, but I think it's a two-way street. Like, it's made me a lot more aware of, like, if a friend comes to me with a very big bad situation where maybe they've been wronged, how do I respond? Do I empathize with them to the point of encouraging unforgiveness, or am I praying with them and for them so that God can heal them, but also so that they are aware that in the situation, whether unfair or not, if I claim to worship and believe God and to obey His word, then His word requires me to forgive. There's so many different aspects of how to come at this thing that sometimes you can be living in unforgiveness and not even realize that you're right there in it. Sometimes unforgiveness can hide as anger. You're angry at someone. Again, like I said in the last video, half the battle is won by realizing that you're even in a battle. Half the battle of forgiveness is won by realizing that the issue here is unforgiveness. But as long as you're walking around thinking it's unfair treatment, or it is anger, or it is, I don't know, trauma from a situation or whatever else, it can wear different masks, and it wears different masks in order to make you think that you're fighting a different battle. But the reality and the truth of the situation is that you could simply be fighting a battle of unforgiveness because there's a deep rooted seed of bitterness growing inside your heart. And when that seed of bitterness grows inside your heart, it only affects you. Ask yourself, like, if I'm constantly angry, why am I angry? Why am I angry? Has life been so unfair? Do other people get better opportunities than me? Is my family messed up? Is my friendships, like, do my friends not want to hang out with me and they hang out with other people only? Am I always the one giving and never receiving? All of those things are very much things that we say off the bat flippantly and are part of our lives all the time. But what we don't realize is the result of those things, when continued in that pattern, leads to unforgiveness. And unforgiveness, if you don't forgive, God can't forgive you. That's one place that you can place yourself and actively move in the opposite direction from God. And you can sit there confused, like, God, where are you? But where would He be? He's on the other side of your decision to forgive or not to forgive. That day that I realized that the issue here was an issue of forgiveness or unforgiveness, I remember I woke up the next morning and I prayed to God and I said, God, okay, great. Last night was incredible. The music was playing. You did it on me. The Holy Spirit was there. It was wonderful. And I made this decision to forgive. But how do I walk in forgiveness? Like, it's one thing to say, okay, I forgive it, or I forgive you. But what does that look like on a day-to-day, especially if the person on the other side continues to behave the way that they do, or continues to do the thing that hurts you? How do I continue to walk in this forgiveness every single day? Do I cut them off? Is that my solution? Is that forgiveness, or is that not forgiveness? And I think quick, fast, every situation, yes, is different, but I do think that there is a strength that God can give us in order to walk in forgiveness and not think that it's a once-off thing. Forgiveness, like love, is a commitment that you make to continue to love that person or to forgive that person. For watching, guys, I really appreciate all of the support. I appreciate the messages that come through, and if there is any specific topics that you would like me to dive into or speak about, whether it is from a biblical perspective or my journey and how God has dealt with me in regards to that, or even if I could maybe bring somebody in to speak about it, it would be really great. So please do keep sending them. Please do comment if you're comfortable to comment with whatever it is you have to say. Otherwise, DM me, send me a WhatsApp, whatever it is, and we'll try to tackle those topics. Thank you, thank you, thank you.